but if our panelists want to, if they can.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's now 9 o'clock, and we are seeing more people joining at this point in time. We are at 56. We are hoping that more people will come through as the session goes by. Welcome to the third day of our Siyaphumelela conference. Yesterday, we had a wonderful presentation from partners, from our partners DUT, UKZN, University of Free State, and Nelson Mandela University. We also had concurrent session 1 up to 4. And in the afternoon, Ahmed Bawa took us through student success designs, followed by a holistic approach presentation by Achieve the Dream, Northern Kentucky University, and DUT. We finished the day with an interesting activity. I hope everyone enjoyed like I did, because my son and my daughter joined me trying to fold those papers. Today, we're going to start with partner presentations from by Riashna Sithaldeen from University of Cape Town, with the topic titled Designing Systems for the Advancement of Student Success. It will be followed by a presentation from Wits University, presented by Diane, Grayson, and Mxolisi. The title of their presentation is the Wits Siyaphumelela Project, Understanding of Student Wellbeing Challenges Before and During COVID-19. We will complete, we will have a concurrent session 5, 6, 7, and 8. Please note that both concurrent session 5, 6, and 7 will finish at 11:40, and everyone is encouraged to join concurrent session 8 at 11:40 for the last presentation. And we will have a new chair. Bill will take us through the some of the keynotes, and we will have an entertainment towards the end. So thank you very much for attending the looking in today. I am going to give Riashna a platform to take us through their presentation. Riashna, the platform is yours.
Thank you so much, Takalani. I'm going to share my screen. And share. Oh, apologies. I need to share screen, check the sound and computer. There we go. Got it. Okay, and then convert this into slideshow. Great. Thank you. Can you confirm that you can see my screen, my slides?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Takalani, and thank you everyone for being here today on this early and cold morning. and for this opportunity to speak about the Siyaphumelela Project at UCT. So while I'm the only presenter today, we're also going to hear other voices in this talk. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that the material presented is generated through the contribution of many of my colleagues at UCT. So at UCT, we are coming to the end of our first year of being a Siyaphumelela partner, and we're very excited to present not only what we've been busy with and what we've been gathering, but also what we are planning for the way forward. So as you can see, the title of my presentation is about designing a system to support student success. And what I'm going to talk you through today is how we at UCT have taken this opportunity created by the funding and access to the network to really envision a better systemic approach to using data to support student success at our institution. So my presentation today is going to cover 4 things. I'm going to talk about some of the Siyaphumelela activities that we've engaged with. I will relay some of the student-centric innovation that we have developed in response to the switch to ERT. I'm only going to talk about one. At UCT, like many of the universities have already reported at this conference, we have engaged in a multitude of activities that not only center the student voice in the way we do things, but also is much more flexible, adaptive, and responsive. And then I would like to talk, moving on then, I would like to talk about how we have started to conceptualize the system for student success. And I'd like to finish my talk with a little bit of a reflection on how the Siyaphumelela initiative has impacted the work that we do at UCT. Now, before I move on, I would like us to take a moment to first hear from our DVC of Teaching and Learning, who will comment on how the executive has seen this work at UCT.
Hello, I'm Liz Lange. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Teaching and Learning at the University of Cape Town. At UCT, we are really excited of have taken the step of joining the Siyaphumelela family and particularly of being working towards closing the achievement gap amongst our students. The financial support provided by the Grayson Foundation and the cooperation and collaboration with a network of partners put us in a very nice position to be able to do this and to be successful in this initiative. Our Vice Chancellor, Professor Paquin, has stressed the effective analytical capability is essential to understand and change for the better unsatisfactory performance amongst our students. As a DVC Teaching and Learning, I chair the Data Analytics for Student Success Committee, which brings together a number of academics and non-academics who are interested in the success of our students and how to best support it. UCT is aiming to develop an institution-wide strategy for data analytics, and we are really concerned and committed to produce meaningful data that will underpin the development of interventions to support our students, while at the same time improving teaching and learning. Learning with the Siyaphumelela network is a very important step in our journey, and we are very, very happy to be part of this. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Liz. So I would like to provide a little bit of context to the work that we are doing at UCT by just sort of flagging what we put down in our proposal as the challenges that we wanted to address. And these were issues of curriculum intervention, academic literacies, these courses that impede graduation, how we scale up advising, and how we would upscale the student experience at UCT. So to that end, we identified a number of work streams that we would engage in, but today I'm just going to focus on the 3 that lead us to this process of designing for institutional integration, as Liz mentioned before. So the 3 work streams are putting in the governance and structural support, starting to conceptualize and measure student success, at our institution, and then also learning from the network has been a really important part of this process. So our Siyaphumelela activities at UCT are arranged around 3 categories of work that align to the 3 goals of our project grant. And these goals are to implement or expand our evidence-based decision-making. Goal 2 is to develop and offer at least 1 service to the network per year. And then goal 3 is to play a leadership role in the regional sub-network. Now, because goal 1 is really the end goal of this particular talk, I'm going to focus touch very quickly on goals 2 and 3 and just indicate what we have been busy with. So with goal 2, so year 1, goal 2, we developed 2 services for the network. This was an overview webinar on how to use diagnostic assessments for placement, curriculum development, and teaching and learning. And this was put together for us by our Center for Educational Assessments, previously known as CTAP. The second service that we developed was a design thinking service offered by the Hasso-Plattner School of Design Thinking. And this was an interactive 3-hour workshop to give participants a high-level overview in an experience of design thinking. Both events were very well attended, and we are busy negotiating a more advanced programming with both departments, who are both very excited about doing more for the network. So I mentioned goal 3. So year 1, goal 3 was the sub-network, a regional network of the Western Cape, which we have been developing with our partners, the CPUT, Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and the University of the Western Cape. And we started this this work stream in March 2021. We've met 3 times already. And what we have done is we have landed on a terms of reference for our group and an agenda. And we have also agreed so far on hosting a first event where we are going to focus on student success. We want to understand it. What do we mean by it? What do we mean by it at each of our institutions, and what can we learn from each other about how we define it differently? And we plan, very, very importantly, to really integrate the student voice into this event. But speaking of centering the student voice, amongst other innovations that have happened at UCT during this switch to ERT and now what we call physically distanced learning, we've spent a lot of time looking at ways in which we take the lived student experience and incorporate that back into our practices. And we've been doing this through various mechanisms like surveys, etc. But today I just want to focus on one particular innovation. And this is one that has been inspired by collaborations with other Siyaphumelela networks, in that UCT for the last 4 years has been part of a Siyaphumelela work stream on academic advising. And in this work stream, we have been developing a variety of conceptual and operational resources towards improving academic advising at UCT. Now, when the pandemic hit and we had to switch to online learning or emergency remote teaching, having a baseline understanding of student support in hand, as well as some of the data about what students were frustrated with within these structures, it allowed us to pivot very quickly to innovate, to provide students with 2 things. We provided a simple way for them to connect to the greater UCT support network. And we also provided a way for them to access information easily and timeously. In doing this, we developed a new service called UCT Cares, or the Central Advising and Referral System. And this is a central email that helps students navigate towards student support across the institution. We also piloted a simple chatbot that was targeted at pre-arrival students, known as Destination UCT. And learning from both of these tools, we've now developed a full chatbot for UCT Cares, which will launch in August, September of this year. And that is going to really advance our capacity in automated advising for information sharing. Now, if you are interested in any of these developments, they will be being presented in concurrent session 8 later this morning. But before I move on from this, I want to highlight a particular success of this work in that it has provided opportunities for us to embed students and their voice and their agency into some of these structures. And so I'd like us to take a minute to hear directly from one of our peer advisors, Mr. Mxolisi Sebetoma, about her experience of this involvement.
Hi, my name is Mxolisi Sebetoma. I'm from the Faculty of Engineering at UCT. I have recently submitted my master's thesis for examination. Last year, I started working as a peer advisor. In April 2020, UCT launched a central advising and referral system known as UCT Cares as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a central help desk which acts as a single point of contact into a greater student system support. As a peer advisor, my role during the switch to emergency remote teaching and learning in 2020, I believe was powerful, as I could understand the students' experiences and I could connect with them on the same level. Many queries that we receive in the UCT Cares mailbox show that students often they need someone who can listen to them or who can give them clarity. As a peer advisor, I have to communicate effectively and show empathy to students. Students, especially first years, they're still trying to come to terms with being away from home, using technology, and others have limited resources. Other students, they struggle to communicate their needs, and language can sometimes be a barrier. As a peer advisor, I can relate to students' concerns and I can provide empathy and compassion needed in this time of stress and strife like the current pandemic. Thank you for taking your time and watching this video.
Thank you, Dimakatso. So one of the very important impacts of having the Siyaphumelela framework to guide us in our operations is that it has particularly guided us towards this idea of holistic design. And what this has done is that it has motivated very strong collaborations with existing internal projects at UCT. And I'm just going to mention two today that lead directly into how we have approached the conceptualization of our system for student success. The first is the DAS project, which is the Data Analytics for Student Success initiative at UCT. It's an initiative that launched almost simultaneously with our network partnership, so the timing could not have been more perfect. And the DAS initiative aims to provide meaningful data and visualizations to help us make better decisions that support student performance over time. Now, what's been great is the DAS team has worked with our Siyaphumelela coach, the amazing Prof. Wendy Kilfoyle, who helped us workshop our wildly important goals and set an agenda for the next few years. And these are set out, as you can see there. We've been focusing in 21 on getting course insights. And in 2022, we'll be looking at plan and progression insights. And this group brings together quite a few people from across the institution, including institutional research, our business objects warehouse team from ICTS, as well as statisticians and academics. And what we've been doing is we have been spending time mapping the data space. We've been interrogating the validity of the reporting that comes out of our warehouse. We have initiated a data dictionary project to ease accessibility of these reports. And we also work with real-time data needs of the institution. So things like the survey output, understanding students' digital needs at the start of ERT, understanding their experience of PDL at the end of the semester, and that sort of thing. And then providing that back as feedback into the system. And then the other project, as I mentioned, the Academic Advising Initiative is part of a Siyaphumelela work stream. And I just want to highlight here the three goals that have been part of the work in conceptualizing our system. And that is that the academic advising at UCT has been working at developing a conceptual and theoretical framework for advising, but also developing tools and resources to meet advising needs within the institution, as well as looking at innovating a data advisor interface that is specific to our context. So that then brings us to the feature of this talk, which is the conceptualizing of the system. And what this will ultimately move us to once we have the system in place is towards this culture of evidence-based decision-making. So our process has been conceptualized as having 5 stages: the data gathering stage, a conceptualizing the model stage, piloting, testing, and refining. Of course, there's always many stages within that. So everything that I've talked about so far has been describing the data gathering stage. So the model that I present is a culmination of these internal collaborations with internal projects. It's a culmination of having network partners come and speak with us. Prof. Grayson came and gave an amazing talk about systems. We've had engagements with the team from Radar. We've had engagements with the team from AutoScholar. We have been having a reference of Siyaphumelela reference group at UCT. It's made up of 55 people from across the non-academic space: financial aid, libraries, student wellness, Department of Student Affairs. Then we have the Student Success Committee that DVC Langa talked about, which is made up of the academic academic representatives. So this very wide range of stakeholder engagements, as well as participation in network activities, know your data, the ethics framework workshop. All of these has directed our thinking about how we could implement or expand our evidence-based decision-making processes. And the answer really has come up that we need a purposefully designed system to underpin this work. So this takes us to stage 2, or what we would call conceptualizing the model, and or basically where we are currently at. And the first part of conceptualizing this model is defining the system. Now, for any of you that know anything about systems thinking, you'll know that an efficient system is designed with a very clear purpose in mind, and all the components in it must help it meet that purpose. So for us, it's become important to identify, to define an overarching purpose, identify the components, and also to provide mechanisms for communication and feedback within the system. So a very rough idea of purpose: use data to effectively support student success, either through systemic or individual intervention. And that is a work in progress. But really, what will the system allow us to do? The broad functions that we've identified is that should allow us to access data. We need to analyze that, we need to present it, and we need to act on this data. And we've also been able to identify then what do we need in order to meet these 4 functions. And very importantly, we need to make our institutional data warehouse accessible. So I'm not just talking about logging in, but how do you actually access as an end user that information in a meaningful way? We need to know where all the other data is that sits around a highly siloed institution. We need meaningful reports. We need to analyze the data with a strong and well-resourced institutional capacity. We need to be able to present that data in meaningful ways, and we need to act on that data. So we particularly need an effective advising capacity and an ethics framework to guide that advising. So we've really identified these 4 kind of broad categories of what kinds of things happen in the system. We need to capture the student journey. We need snapshots of student performance. We need historical performance. We need possible future performance. We need to intervene where the trajectory is dipping downwards. And we need to be able to guide the behavior within the system. And you'll see the components that I've put in there, they're at various levels of development. So the solid line filled in is something that already exists. Some things exist in part with the dotted line. Some things don't exist at all. And so we are busy looking at ways to develop it. And some things are being developed, like the advising intervention. And what I've just sort of jotted in there in the blue text are the various projects and that are ongoing that are working on these particular components. So I just want to point out from this particular slide that it's very important to note that when we talk about intervention, we don't always refer to intervening on the student at the student level. That sometimes interventions need to be systemic, and things like the SIGs, so the courses impeding graduation work and the curriculum review work, are good examples of how we are taking that forward. We've also identified that there are mechanisms that we need to present, analyze, and allow the data to flow through those systems. And things like course dashboards, early warning systems, case management systems, etc., are some of those components that we have identified through our explorations with other institutions. So what I have here is just one example of what the system could look like. You know, in your system, you need loops, you need interacting components, you need flows. And this is essentially where we are right now with visualizing how we would bring all of this together, what the components are that would be needed, how we build those components, and how we utilize existing resources within the system. So I'd like to complete or finish with a last slide that reflects very briefly on some of the impacts that Siyaphumelela, being part of the Siyaphumelela network, has had at UCT. And here I just want to flag that it has given us amazing opportunities to learn from the network. And what the impact of that has been is that it has reduced our initial investment that's needed in terms of doing all that groundwork in exploring possible opportunities. It's also really inspired internal collaboration and making points of connection where they didn't exist before. And this has been an absolute must, because it not only does it reduce your initial resource and capacity investment when you're doing exploration, but it also supports holistic design. Being a network partner has given us the impetus for putting in the governance and infrastructure to support this work. And the central oversight has been essential in keeping the work aligned to institutional strategy. It's also given us some much needed, especially in the COVID moment, some much needed flexibility to support as needed development, like cares and onboarding some of those advisors. It's also opened up resources to allow the embedding of students into structures, as I mentioned, that flexibility. And most importantly, I think what this has done for us is this idea of evidence-based decision-making has been a long-held vision at UCT. But it is this resource continuity that Siyaphumelela has provided that has really supercharged the work. And of course, ultimately is driven by our motivation to support student success. And with that, I will say thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Riashna. Riashna is the Deputy Director of Academic Development Center for Higher Academic Development Program within the Center for Higher Education and Development at UCT. Thank you very much for taking us through how Siyaphumelela is structured and the impact of the work for Siyaphumelela. We're asking everyone that has a question to raise their hand. We only have one question now in the Q&A tab. It says, thank you for the very insightful presentation, Riashna. May I ask how the POPI Act will influence where you will look at the student performance? Riashna?
Sure. Thank you, Takalani. Yes. So at the moment, that the POPI Act has been sort of very timely, because we had just been starting to look at our ethics framework, and we'd done the workshop, and we realized it was very important that we had that almost from the beginning. So the short answer is, I don't know exactly. The medium-term answer is that's exactly what we're working on right now at UCT. So now that we've been working on all of this without having that hanging over us, but now that it is on board, UCT, obviously, as every other institution, is busy looking at this for our context, and we will be onboarding that. So we work very closely with the registrar's office at the moment to make sure that we are all in alignment.
Okay, thank you, Riashna. I don't see any question in the Q&A or in the anyone who raised their hand. Thank you very much for that presentation once more, Riashna. We are going to have the second partner presentation. That will be from Diane Grayson, who's the Senior Director of Academic Affairs at the University of Witwatersrand. And Diane is joined by Mxolisi Masango, who's the Head of Analytics and Institutional Research at Wits University as well. Welcome both Diane and Mxolisi. The platform is yours. You can talk to the participants.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. As mentioned, my name is Mxolisi Masango. I am the project lead for the Siyaphumelela Project at the University of the Witwatersrand. Greg, may I request that you project our first slide? Thank you. So at Wits, our Siyaphumelela Project has three main focus areas, which are to implement the Wits institutional framework for student success, to enhance capacity in institutional research and data analytics, and to understand the burden of common mental health disorders, namely anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation among our students. It gives me pleasure to introduce to you this morning the Wits panel members. The first introductory presentation will be delivered by the DVC academic, Professor Ruxana Osman, followed by the Senior Director for Academic Affairs, Professor Diane Grayson. We will also have one of our students, Ms. Tato Mutaung, who will give a student perspective. And lastly, we'll have Ms. Fezile Mzuli, who will present some of the data that we've collected on student well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, may I then invite you to our Siyaphumelela presentation. Please start the video.
Gives me great pleasure to greet all of the participants at the Siyaphumelela conference on behalf of the University of the Witwatersrand. I'm Professor Ruxana Osman, Provost and Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor at Wits. Unfortunately, neither the Vice Chancellor nor I are able to join you for your synchronous online session today. But I'm very pleased that through technology, I am able to share a few thoughts with you. Next year, Wits turns 100. In that time, Wits has actively promoted democratic values, human rights, and social justice. In South Africa in 2021, one of the pressing social justice issues we face as a country is to enable students from historically marginalized and underserved communities to enjoy the benefits of a good education. For us at Wits, that means not only providing access, but also doing all that we can to ensure student success. While we have always offered a number of forms of support to our students, our efforts were not necessarily underpinned by data. The awarding of the Siyaphumelela grant to Wits in 2015 provided an important resource and impetus to use data as the basis for our support efforts. The initial grant enabled us to develop a biographical questionnaire, or a BQ, as a means of collecting data on our newly entering first-year students so that we could provide support proactively. Today, we have close to 100% response rate, and in fact, over the past 2 years, our business intelligence services staff have used the BQ data and other institutional data to develop models that predict student persistence. These models are now available to student advisors so that they can see which students they should reach out to proactively. Over the past 18 months, our student success framework has become more focused and more integrated. In 2018, my predecessor, Professor Andrew Crouch, tasked the Senior Director for Academic Affairs, Professor Diane Grayson, to develop an institutional student success framework so as to provide greater coherence and connection among the many support initiatives that existed across the university. This institutional framework was approved by Senate and Council in late 2019. In 2020, in order to implement the framework, a strengthened high-level cross-cutting student success committee was established, which I chair. The Siyaphumelela activities are an important agenda item at every meeting of this committee. The Student Success Committee has been constituted as a subcommittee of the Senate Teaching and Learning Committee, which I also chair. We have thus made sure that student success at Wits is part of our institutional agenda right up to the highest level of governance. I will hand over to Professor Grayson to provide more details about our student success work at Wits. Thank you again for giving me a few minutes to be able to share some of our thoughts on student success at Wits University.
Good morning to participants at the 6th Siyaphumelela Conference. It gives me pleasure to be able to speak with you this morning about what we're doing at Wits, and also to have been able to attend the previous 5 conferences and see how we're really growing as a higher education sector in promoting student success. One of the important things that we've been able to do as part of the Siyaphumelela network is to send a number of people to Achieving the Dreams annual conference. We now had dozens of staff from Wits from various units and structures who've attended, and this has been incredibly valuable, as Achieving the Dream not only addresses people's minds but also touches people's hearts and shows us how it is possible to work with our students and with data to help them succeed. One of the important things we've done at Wits in our student success work in the last few years is to develop an institutional framework for student success. We began in 2018 by collecting baseline data on the student supports that we had. And what we found is that we had dozens of initiatives, but they operated independently of one another like islands, some big, some small, but disconnected. And so the student really had to swim, so to speak, from one island of support to another, and each time retell their story. And so in 2019, I was asked to spearhead the development of an institutional framework for student success. This is the task team that I worked with, and you can see that it's a mixture of academics, support and professional staff, and students. In developing this framework, we used systems thinking, and we received support from 2 systems engineers at Wits. When we think about what a system is, it's useful to use Dana Meadows' definition. She's one of the leading thinkers in system thinking. A system, she says, is an interconnected set of elements that is coherently organized in a way that achieves something. So 3 important components: a purpose or a function, elements, and interconnections in order to achieve something coherent like this rather than like this. What we came up with was a model for student-centered holistic support. We identified 4 areas in which our students need support: academic, health and wellness, material needs, and personal development. And in each of these areas, there were a number of specific forms of support that we identified. And in order to do this, the enabling conditions were data and information for students. And this model requires that we work across what were historically silos. One of the important things we realized as well was that we need to leverage institutional culture, since in Peter Drucker's famous words, strategy eats culture, eats strategy for breakfast. So we realized that at Wits, because we have a very decentralized management model, it would not work for us to centralize all supports. And what we needed to do instead was to develop a networked model where the nodes in the network were key units and individuals in particular positions with strong communication links among them, so that we could have feedback and address issues that arose quickly. So we still have our support offered in a variety of places and through a variety of structures, but now they are interconnected. This was very useful last year when COVID-19 struck in March, and so we had to go into lockdown. On the 15th of March, we ended our first term a week early, and then on the 27th of March, we had the nationwide lockdown. On the 15th of April, we rescheduled our second term to start with student orientation in an online mode. And on the 20th of April, we shifted all of our teaching from face-to-face to emergency remote teaching in an online mode. To do all of this, we then needed to mobilize the network. And there were a number of ways in which we did this, and I'm going to illustrate. So the first thing we needed to do was to make sure that we could actually do emergency remote teaching using our learning management system. This was challenging because previously, only a minority of courses and lecturers and students had used the learning management system. And so it involved working with a number of people from our Academic Information Systems Unit, ICT, our Business Intelligence Services, and deans and assistant deans and heads of schools to make sure that by the time we started teaching on the 20th of April, there was an active learning management site, course site, for every active course. There were other areas in which we needed to similarly use our networked approach, supporting students to learn online, for example. There were hardware and software needs, as well as student support for psychosocial issues and academic issues. We needed to support our academic staff as well to be able to use the LMS and engage in emergency remote teaching. We needed to help our students to learn online and to stay on track. But also, we are trying to embed student success before the pandemic and now beyond. So one of the important areas for student success at Wits is data analytics. We have included data analytics for student success as one of 7 focus areas in our learning and teaching plan, and also as one of 6 institutional projects in our University Capacity Development Grant. An important aspect of managing this student success framework is our Student Success Committee, and I thought I would just show you the members. This is a high-level committee that we constituted at the beginning of last year. And you can see it's got senior management, middle management, students, academics, and support and professional staff. One of the very important things the Student Success Committee did last year was to develop indicators for student success. Lagging indicators, increased completion rate, decreased time to completion, and decreased disparities in completion rate by race and gender. And then leading indicators, increased retention, increased progression, sufficient credit points, decreased bottlenecks, and uptake of advising. This year, our Business Intelligence Services has created dashboards to monitor the progress in each of these indicators. And these are also divided up by faculty, and the deans are now accountable to the provost. Finally, we're in the process of developing a new strategic plan, and this provides us with a new opportunity to embed student success at Wits. Thank you.
Good day. My name is Tato Mudawung. I am a final year Bachelor of Health Science student at the University of the Witwatersrand. Adjusting to COVID-19 has been a learning curve, not only for students, but for institutions at large. We have had to alter the way we interact with one another, and so institutions have also had to modify the manner in which they provide support to their students. While adjustments have not necessarily been simple, I believe the key thing to note is the progression and the support that has been rendered by the Faculty of Health Science to its students, beginning with the academic support. The various departments under the Faculty of Health Sciences have continued to render academic support for their students through the interaction with lecturers and tutors. Along with this, the Office of Student Success, known as the OSS, continues to facilitate an academic advisory program for all students who choose to make use of it. Although these interactions have now shifted towards a more telephonic and electronic approach, I think the key thing to note is that these services still remain available for students should they desire to use them. Secondly, the OSS also continues to facilitate a peer-to-peer mentorship program where senior students are recruited and trained to mentor junior students within academic and personal capacities. I believe that this is especially important in this time in order to maintain a sense of community within the student body. An additional support structure is the tutoring program. The tutoring program is facilitated by the OSS, where senior undergraduate students and postgraduate students are recruited and trained by academic advisors to tutor junior students and receive a stipend for their service. Now, I believe that this assists the student body in two different ways. Firstly, by providing additional academic support to the junior student, and secondly, for the senior student, this affords them the opportunity to earn additional income. I mean, it goes without saying that the effects of COVID-19 have been far-reaching, and so the opportunity to earn while you learn is truly a valuable one. Another intervention that shows support of the student even outside of the classroom is the Make a Difference campaign. The Make a Difference campaign is facilitated by the OSS along with a body of student volunteers who distribute care packages consisting of various necessities to several students in the faculty who may benefit from them. Lastly, the Faculty of Health Sciences has a strong network of student societies who have really played their part in easing the anxieties of students and keeping students well informed on the progression of COVID-19 by hosting very informative webinars with esteemed speakers who shared knowledge on the scientific progression of COVID-19, the vaccine safety and development process, as well as the vaccine rollout.
One of the three focus areas of our Siyaphumelela 2.0 project seeks to better understand student well-being and how it intersects with their success. Understanding how well-being impacts on performance is particularly important now as we grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic, which without a doubt has exacerbated the food insecurity situation and reignited the conversation on mental health. This is particularly relevant for students who have had to adjust to new modes of learning, new environments, and deal with the consequences of COVID-19 and the lockdown. Some of the key broader questions guiding this work include understanding the challenges introduced by the pandemic in order to identify areas where we can mitigate the negative impact that COVID-19 may have on students and their success. We know that one of the biggest inducers of anxiety amongst our students early in the pandemic was the fear of failure. This suggests that students themselves realized the gravity of the pandemic, and Wits really came together to make the transitioning to remote learning smooth, while promoting well-being and providing support on various platforms as highlighted by the Senior Director, Academic Affairs. As part of Focus Area 1 of our project, we conceptualized a study that looked at how COVID-19 impacted on teaching, learning, and well-being. A study committee chaired by Prof. Diane Grayson was constituted with representatives from various key departments and with all faculties represented. Prof. Grayson has spoken about Wits' response in terms of teaching and learning. I will focus on student well-being. We started collecting baseline data on 3 well-being variables: anxiety, depression, and food insecurity from the 2019 first-time, first-year student cohort. What we found was 23% of students experienced hunger, with 5% experiencing severe hunger. 18% of students exhibited severe anxiety symptoms, and 9% exhibited severe depressive symptoms. Last year, in 2020, we managed to collect data at 2 points, in March, April, during level 5 of lockdown, and again in September, October, during level 2 and 1 of lockdown. We plan to collect data again next semester as we plan to follow this cohort. This is what we found. The prevalence of anxiety, depression, and suicidality during the pandemic was higher than our 2019 baseline. Furthermore, we noticed that the prevalence of anxiety, depression, and suicidality symptoms increased with the easing of lockdown restrictions, suggesting that COVID-19 and lockdown may have a lagged effect on the mental health of students. We were also able to link reduced household income, being infected with COVID-19, non-conducive study environments, and poor access to devices and the internet, with higher levels of anxiety, depression, and suicidality symptoms. When looking at food insecurity, we found that the overall prevalence of food insecurity with hunger and severe hunger during the pandemic was lower than the baseline. This suggests that living at home may be protecting students against food insecurity. In fact, we found that all those with unstable accommodation during lockdown experienced food insecurity with hunger. It is also worth mentioning that many of the students who experienced food insecurity with hunger also had symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. Professor Grayson, together with our student Tado, have already highlighted many of the initiatives that Wits has put in place to support both staff and students during the pandemic. I have highlighted a few which are relevant to well-being and speak to some of the issues I have raised. These include the Student Crisis Line and app, which provide emotional and psychological support to students in distress. I mentioned that access to devices and data were linked to poor mental health, and Prof. Grayson mentioned the device loan program and data agreements that Wits has with leading network providers. Students living in unconducive environments are prioritized for university residences, and there are campus-wide mental wellness and food security campaigns to support students in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just before I hand over to you, I would like to acknowledge the Office of Student Success in the Faculty of Health Sciences, particularly our student, Ms. Tato Motawung, as well as Doctors Elizabeth Ndofirepi and Constance Cooper for their assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mxolisi, for facilitating the presentation and even for saving some time. So we have 8 minutes of question and answers. So far, I have 2 questions in the Q&A. The first one is from Delicia team, is directed to Diane. Can you please share what are key elements of the success of communication in the network at Wits?
Okay.
Diane?
Sure. So thank you for that question. So I want to say first and foremost that our ability to work together is based upon relationships. I think this is a really important learning for us, because it's so easy, you know, to get so busy with the tasks that you forget about the relationships. So I want to say that we really work on our relationships with one another. And then to say that we have this, I want to say it's like a matrix structure at Wits. And that enables us to communicate horizontally and vertically. So I'll give you an example. If you look at the student advisors, every faculty has student advisors. They report, vertically you could say, to the assistant deans for teaching and learning in their faculties. So you have that reporting line and line of communication all the time. But in addition, all of the faculty student advisors from across all the faculties belong to a community of practice. And that community of practice is facilitated by our our head of student academic development, Razia Musa. So you can see they're communicating this way and they're communicating that way. And then we have those assistant deans and Razia all sitting on the student success committee. And so that is then, that information is getting channeled up institutionally. So there's these multiple communication channels that are happening that are very structured and formal, in addition to a whole lot of informal communication.
Okay, thank you, Diane. The second question from Q&A, it says that what psychological support were concerned? Did you help concerning bereavement, counseling, increase with death of family members?
Yeah, so we have different places and opportunities for counseling. So we have a center for counseling. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but let me have a go, and then Fezile or Mxolisi can come in. We have psychologists, registered psychologists at our counseling center, Center for Careers and Counseling Development. And they are the ones who are qualified to deal with bereavement, anxiety, and other psychosocial issues. In addition, and I believe health sciences also has their own counselors, psychologists who are counselors. And then we have the faculty student advisors who are not psychologists, and they are able to deal with things that are not, they're not in the realm of mental illness or serious psychological effects. So they can deal with students who are feeling a bit anxious, but when it comes to the grief, the anxiety, the depression, those are dealt with by our psychologists. Certainly there was a lot of anxiety. I think Fezile mentioned some of it. But again, we have this kind of matrix structure where they can go first and foremost to the student advisors and from there be referred to the psychologists if they need it, or they can go directly to the psychologists. And as Fezile mentioned, and the student also mentioned, a lot of our work then in last year and now this year as well has been either online or telephonic counseling. I don't know, Fezile, if you want to add, or Lucy.
I think Diane have touched on all of the key support. So in addition to those that you've mentioned, we also have the ICAS, which is a crisis line support where the students specifically, they can also be able to raise some of those sensitive issues that they might have. Fezile?
The last thing that I'd just like to add is the psychiatrists. So we also have access to psychiatrists via the Wits Campus Health Center. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Just using my chair liberty and ask a question. In the middle of COVID-19, I think it was late last year, early this year, Wits had not just Wits, but other institutions as well experienced a protest. And Wits was kind of at the media phase. So how did that affect student success initiatives at Wits?
So I don't think they had an adverse effect on student success. the main people involved in those discussions were student affairs and finance and the management. And again, because we really are trying to take a pro-student approach. So one of the things we've been working on really hard, and I really want to credit here our Dean of Student Affairs, Jerome September, but others as well, to try to help students understand we're with you, we're for you. Finance is an issue, there isn't enough money in the system, but we're doing everything that we can to help you. So I don't think it destabilized our student success initiatives. I think it was though about trying to help students to understand that we really are doing what we can, and we understand that because it was about finances, right? Mostly. I don't know, Mxolisi, if you want to add anything.
Okay. Thank you very much, the Wits team, for sharing students' Siyaphumelela initiatives and how you've embedded student success into the system. We are going, it's now it's 10 o'clock. We are going to have a comfort break for 10 minutes. And when we come back, there are concurrent sessions, as I've indicated earlier, concurrent session 5, 6, 7, and 8. You are welcome to join any concurrent session, and around the last session, you're also welcome to move to concurrent session 8 when the 3 presentations from the sessions that you are in are done. And thank you very much for everyone that participated and asked questions in this session. Thank you.